Hi, I'm Anand. This video will take us through a tour of apps in Meon. So we'll look at some of the apps and see how we can use them, what they're meant for, and so on. So we'll begin by going to the home page and click on Actions, Apps. That's one way to get to the apps. Let's look at the apps from there. Now you can always go and say I want to only see the apps that are clonable. By the way, this video assumes you've seen some of the introductory videos and are familiar with the concepts of clonable apps and what apps are and what they contain and what content versus schema is and so on. So I guess the main video to watch would be the Meon detailed overview. And if you're interested in cloning apps for yourself, then the video on cloning apps. So that's the background for this video, but it's not really necessary. You can still kind of dive in and follow along, and if you get stuck somewhere, you can go back and refer to those videos. All right, so there's over 90 videos here because each of these sections has about 10. So I think there's about 90 plus 90 over 90 apps here. Sorry, and there's some of them are duplicated. So let me actually go and see this in a different way. So let's go look at the admin created apps because some apps have been cloned by users, and so we'll just look. So I went to the admins page which has content apps. So these are the apps created by the admin of the site. So basically you can go and click on this more apps, and you can now see there are somewhere upwards of 80 apps out here. So let's look at some of these apps. We already visited the auto-graded quiz in a fair amount of detail in the video on cloning apps. So you can look at that cloning apps video and kind of skip down to the section where you see the auto-graded quiz app being talked about, and you'll get an idea of that. It's a very cool app where you can create a quiz and set some questions, and you can set what's the maximum score for each question. You can secretly mention what the answer is, and when someone comes and takes the quiz will and submits publishes the quiz, automatically the quiz will be graded for them. All right, so that's the auto-graded quiz. A Q&A app where people can ask questions and others can answer them. So that's kind of a fairly common app. Let's look at the news app. So a news app is an app which allows you to post news that seems interesting to you, and out of all the news that we hear, you have certain things which you'd like to share with your community. You could clone this app and add your post your news daily as to what you find interesting. There's an app where you can share great riddles for kids, an app where you can create tutorials for various tasks. Let's maybe look at the tutorials app a little in detail before we move on. So let me just open this, and here we are in the tutorials app. There's already a couple of tasks here which were created by different people, and so basically each app has a structure which we already talked about. It has items, and there are child items, and there are fields within each item. So in this case, you define a task for which you're writing tutorials, and then you can add a bunch of tutorials under them or just one, and others can come in and add them if you allow them as well. So they can add tutorials under these tasks. So the main item in the tutorials app is a task. So you can specify a task, and so I created this task called how to create a screencast on a Mac. So this tutorial, so I created a task called how to create a screencast on a Mac, and the domain for the tutorial is screencasts. And under that, I created a tutorial which shows how to do this with using QuickTime Player. And in fact, that's what I'm using right now to record this screencast. So this is the one I created. I embedded links to images, and I wrote all of this, and then I had a link to a video which shows some specific element of how to pause when you're recording and so on. So this is how easy it is to create a tutorial. Now, if I wanted to create another tutorial For the same task, I would just go click here on another new tutorial. Or if I wanted to create a new task, I would go to this breadcrumbs bar up here, click on the task item and say new task, and I could add a task, and I could add, once I publish it, I can add a tutorial under that. So I'll have all these different tasks, and each task will have a bunch of tutorials under them. So that's the idea of this app. So we'll move on to the other apps. We'll not spend too much time actually, creating content in these, because that could take a whole lot of time. But here's an app where you can create digital books. It's like publishing your own book online, and you can have chapters. So if you look at the digital books app, you have it's admin's app called Digital Books, but you can clone it, or you can directly publish a book inside this, since it lets you publish in your digital book. But let's say we have create a new digital book. So let's probably just do this for the purpose of testing. So we say my new book. I can probably change the title later. Author is R.C. Anand. And when I started the book, so since I have a date field here, it allows me to pick the date. I could pick today's date, and finish whenever I finish it. Let's not do that yet because it's not yet finished. Then I could publish it. So maybe it's going to be a fiction book, so I could just tag it with fiction, mystery, whatever. So, and then I publish it, and now I can add chapters to it. So I can add the first chapter. I call it chapter 1, my first chapter, and I have something in the chapter. I could add, this is the beginning of a long story, and then publish it. So now if I go back up to my new book in this breadcrumbs bar again, this handy tool to get to different points, I see this is my new book and it has one chapter in it. And I could add more chapters. I could say, a new chapter, or I could go look at other chapters if there were, but there's only one right now. So there's just, I could keep adding more chapters, and when I'm done, I can go and publish the book, and everyone else can see it. So I could have saved this as a draft if I was not done with the chapter, but this is just for illustration. So that's how I would use this particular app. So let me go back up to admin's apps, and we have, there's an app here called Great Apps. So this is basically an app where you can review all these apps which are called Great something or the other are under the category called reviews. So it's like great digital apps, like some mobile apps that you like or web apps that you like. You want to write a review for that, you can list the app, then write a review under that. Similarly, you have a great digital games. The games are different because you can of course list the game and its details, and then under that you can have a review. You can also have a walkthrough of the game saying, this is the steps for playing the game, each level of the game, and so on. And similarly, here's an app for tracking experts in different domains. So you can create, the experts app has a domain as the main item. That's why you see a new domain option here. So I could add a new domain and say, hey, I'm interested in chess, and I can say, I can create a domain called chess if it's not already there, and under that I can track all the people I consider to be experts. Now if I want to have my own version of the experts app and say these are the domains that I care about, and I want to have a separate instance of the app, I would have cloned the app, and then within that I would add the domains that I care about, so that it doesn't get mixed and lost among all the different domains that are added directly into the experts app created by admin. All right, so that's the first page of apps. And then there's an app for creating flashcards which has a front. So you create a set for some topic, a set of flashcards, and each flashcard set has a bunch of cards which has a front, and each front has a back. So you can have a front and a back, and it's like, sort of like flipping the card over, looking at the front instance and the back instance. You have a code walkthrough app which is for programmers, where you can say here's a task and here's the walkthrough of code needed to perform that task. And this is an app which is called Caption Challenge, which allows you to post links to pictures, and others can post creative captions for it, and you could probably pick one of them and say, hey, I'd like this caption for this picture. So and then similarly you can post snippets of code. That's another app for developers. Here's an app called Collaborate, which is quite an interesting project where somebody could start a story with a theme and say, this is the theme that I want to write a story, or it could also be nonfiction, but in general, let's say it's a story, and you start with the theme and you start with probably the opening couple of paragraphs of that story, and other members can come in and extend the story in different ways. And the really cool thing about this app is you can have different threads that the app takes off, and so you could be like, I started the story one way, and then John comes in and adds next part of that story. I go in and add an alternative second part to the story just besides John's. So there's now two different ways the story could progress, and or I could add something under John's, and then that would be one thread. So you can have this amazing different ways in which the story could progress, and at the end of the day, you have this pretty cool storylines, a bunch of storylines around the same theme. The next app is called Video Playlists. You can share any kind of video playlist. So I created a video playlist of some favorite Indian music that I like. So that it could just be a bunch of links to YouTube videos of those songs, or it could be any videos anywhere really. But it's a playlist which you can look at and sort of share with others, and others could use it as well. This is again a review app for great movies. You can list the movie and then write a review for the movie. Portals is a pretty powerful app, and this illustrates a very interesting concept. So I'll start by creating a new portal in this, and let's say, let's say my portal is about. So you generally have a topic for your portal. So this is a portal, as in this is a place where I'm going to post a bunch of articles, blogs, feeds, videos, and so on related to a common topic. So let me pick something which has been in my radar in the recent past. So, smartwatches. So let's say smartwatches. So I'm creating a portal about. So let me be even more specific. So let's say smartwatch faces, right? So there's this whole notion where you can in some of the there are different watch faces and very creative things being done about how you can have a watch face for a smartwatch, which allows you to do a lot of things which you couldn't do with a traditional watch. So this could be a portal about all the new cool things happening there. Uh, so I could, tag it as smartwatch and publish. Now I have this new portal, and these are all the things I can add under it. So this portal item, which we are right now looking at an instance of, which is a smartwatch faces, has a feed item, an infographics item, an articles item, a pictures item, a videos item, and a beginner resource item. So there's so many different things, and you could add, more to them. So you can add a new feed, a new infographic, a new article, new picture, and so on. So let me show you quickly how this works. So let's say, this is a bad example. I don't have anything handy right now, but let's say I wanted to add a feed to Android Central, which is one of the Android review sites. So here I could type Android Central. I think this is the link, and I can just say Android if I wanted to. And here's what I've done. I've taken a feed URL. So this feed is basically the RSS or Atom feed that some sites publish, so you can subscribe to it and you can keep getting new posts and new videos and so on which come in from there. So let me just publish this, and you will see that it is okay. There's something wrong here. Oh, I see. So there was a bug earlier on which led to this being a little messed up. Let me refresh this page. Yeah, this is not going to work, I guess, because so it's showing these feed.idle entity title. This is not really what I intended to show here. So let me go back and change. Okay, let's leave it. So we have the feed, but there's a bug which causes it to show some old stale data. So I'll basically ignore that for now. Let's go in. So the point I was making is that you can add just a link to a feed, and it's going to expand that out and show you the whole thing. And to show you an example of that, let me show you my platform portal. Uh, so there's admin has a platform portal, and this has a feed called Platform Thinking Blog, and yeah, there's something not working there. But basically, the I need to fix this. But basically, there's the ability for this feed to be expanded and show you all the content within that feed. And right now, it's because I'm using kind of an intermediate version of the program of the site. It's not working as expected. But basically, you'll see that whole site expanded. So that's what feeds are. So all you have to do is really create a string field and put a link which happens to be a feed, and it gets detected and it will automatically go and fetch the feed information. All right, so believe me, it does work, and right now it's not because it's using some old cached information which is showing up the wrong information here. All right, so the same thing goes for videos. So let's say you want to create a video. I wanted to add a new video, and I could just I could give it a title. I could say, smartwatch review. And if I added like a YouTube video link here, or any common video sites link here to a video, then the video would come in embedded. I don't have a link handy, so I'm not putting anything in here. But if you use that, you'll directly get when you see the page, you'll actually see the video embedded right there, and you can start playing it. All right, so that's showing you about the portal app. So the portal app has the ability to add a whole bunch of things uh, to around a single topic. Okay, so let's go back to admin apps, and we saw portals. Here's another app. This is one of the newer kind of apps, which is called Cool Stuff, and it's just a place for people to share things that they find to be cool, whatever it is. It could be a person, it could be a poem, it could be a movie, a book, product, a really cool gadget. It could be a piece of art, it could be a painting, anything that you find really cool. You share it, and it'll be a really nice place to share stuff that everyone gets to see what others consider cool, and it could be a nice kind of experience. Now this is very interesting because people do share a lot of things, and they share them because they like them, but this enforces a different way of looking at it. It says, you share things which you find cool. So you take the sort of conscious effort to say, what are the things I consider really cool, the top few things, that I want to post those things here. And you go out and post them, as opposed to sharing things which come your way and you find them cool. I guess it's the same thing, but when you actually go and try to find what are the top 5 things or 10 things which I find really cool, and I try to post them on a site, I think you'll do a different kind of weightage to things than if you just find something in a stream and share it along. So just an interesting thought on how this could pan out. And again, there's a review on great smartphones. We'll go a little quicker now. There's an app for creating recipes. This app called PVFP Calculator is an app apparently familiar to financial professionals. They do so you have it's really it's a compound interest calculation which allows you to enter 3 out of 4 values, which is the present value of money, and the rate of interest, the cycles or the number of years or cycles through which you go through, and then the final value or the future value. And out of these 4, if you enter 3, the 4th one is automatically calculated. So this is an app which uses the field type called expressions, an expression field type, which allows you to do a bunch of calculations. So let's quickly clone this, since we have gotten this far. We might as well clone it, publish it, and now let's actually use it. So here an invalid value is set as -1, and that's how the app has been built. So you basically have a new value calculator, and right now everything is set as -1, but we have to enter 3 valid values, and the 4th one gets computed. So let's say the present value is $100, the rate is like 10%, oops, the cycles are, let's say, 10 cycles, and we leave the computed cycles to the future value to be blank. All right, so the thing looks a little confusing here. There are these fields called computed values for each of these, and that's how we enable the app to take any three values and then compute the fourth. So we kind of do a bit of magic there. We can look at the app structure to understand how it works. But let's say we publish this. So as soon as I publish this, we find that $100 computed at 10% per annum over 10 years will yield you $259.37. So this is a very cool app, but it's by itself, and it's also an interesting beginnings of a class of apps that anyone could build, where you can compute the a value from a given set of values. You could have like unit conversion apps. You could have, you know, all kinds of fitness computation apps like body mass index and things like that. You could have uh, grade calculation apps by entering, different grades and then getting like the average grade or the best grade. There's several such possibilities. So this is you could create a bunch of apps of this kind, which are like calculator apps, and that would be an interesting space to look at. So let's kind of go back to the admins apps, and I think we went past this page. So we are now at, yeah, so and then these are some apps where really others can't contribute, because there's a Meon tutorials app, which is where we post tutorials, video tutorials. I mean, like the one the one I'm just recording. So we put those over there so people can find them, and that's not intended for others to either clone. That's why it's not clonable. You don't see the clone button, and you don't see a new Meon tutorial because it's not everybody. I'm signed in as RC Anand, as you see here, so I can't add tutorials. Similarly, there's a Meon FAQ. The blog app we've seen a few times now, so we'll not go into that. You can look at it at leisure. There's a Meon feedback app, which allows users to send feedback. So this particular app is not clonable, but there's another, for most of these Meon apps, there's a corresponding app that is clonable. So there's a tutorials app which people can use to create their own tutorials. There's an FAQ app for creating FAQs for your company, for example, for your own organization. The feedback app for creating your own feedback, and so on. There's Find a Professional. There's a learning app, which has been one of my favorite areas. It's basically, this app lets you enter subjects, and under each subject list the top links for learning that subject. So that way people can vote them, people can add other resources, and you get this really good repository of learning. And so you have this learning app. We already saw the auto-graded quiz. A manually graded test is a little more elaborate, where you have a bunch of questions, but they might have grades as well assigned to them, but the teacher would manually grade each question by looking at the answers and then deciding what the score should be for that student. So that's another kind of app. And let's move on. We have the Meon Docs. You could use the Docs app, which is not this one, but there's a separate app called Docs, which you could just clone and use to create your own documentation for your product and host it here on Meon. This app is again a very interesting app called Evidence, where you put in a claim. You probably need to clone this app, because everyone can't put in a claim. But let's say that you clone it, and then you can add a new claim where you make a statement which you want people to actually provide evidence for or against, which could be scientific research or any kind of compelling evidence to one way or the other settle that claim, right? To decide whether it's true or not. So I think these kind of apps are very interesting because they allow people to get to the truth behind several things which are confused often in the media, and people find contradicting and conflicting information. So it would be really good to have an experience where people can enter very rigorous evidence for different claims. Thanks is another similarly what I consider one of my favorite apps, where people can come and they can thank uh, anything that has helped them. So nowadays, the way we thank people or products or companies or anything is through the social forum by sharing it and so on. But sometimes there are these obscure blogs, or a person we met on the train, somebody who just made some big contribution to our life in a positive way, which helped us a great way. But there's really no central place to go and thank those people. So this app will allow you to go in and enter the person or product or website or whatever it is that helped you, and just say thanks and thank that person for thank that product or the person, and say this is why I'm thankful. And and it's sometimes if it's a product or an organization that you're thanking, then the organization actually gets feedback that this is how they've helped someone, and it makes them feel nice. It's the same thing with people. If the people whom you're thanking are also on Meon, they can see how how much of an impact they've had in your life. So that's another interesting app. As I said before, there's a docs app which you can clone and you can create your own documentation. There's an app to find local doctors. I think I glossed over an app earlier on which said find a professional, which is very similar to this, where you're trying to find. So I had a whole variety of apps. I think the idea was to club them all into that find a professional. But basically, you want to find a local doctor. You could use this app, or you could use the find a professional and say, I'm looking for a doctor in this area. And if other people from that area are on Meon, they can respond with the doctors that they know. Similarly, you had find a carpenter, find a plumber, find a uh, anything, a shop to buy a specific brand of shoes, anything at all really. So basically, you can ask for in the local area. You want to find an recommendation from people from that same area. The Home Remedies app allows you to share natural home remedies for common ailments, kind of clubbed together with the doctor. That's why you see it here. And you see great puzzles where you can share puzzles and get others to try them out, and others can share puzzles which you can try out. And then there's sort of a bunch of apps which are for kids. So you want to have a party game for your next birthday party of your kid, then this is a place where you can post ideas, or others could post ideas which you could look up. And similarly, clean jokes for kids, a place where you can find and post good jokes which can be used by parents everywhere with their kids. Uh, Similarly, activities that you can do with kids on a weekend, or things like that. Again, reviews of tablets, smartwatches, products in general, TV shows, books that you loved. Then, so those are all like kind of in the review category, but each of them is different because the structure of a book is entirely different from the structure of a TV show, and in some cases, you need some different kinds of information when it comes to describing them as well as reviewing them. And then we come to the issues app. This is an interesting one again because it's a full-blown issue tracker, which currently is based on issues for Meon. In fact, you can, if you go in to the actions menu here and say report an issue, you're actually using a variant of this app called Meon Issues, which is where you can where you can report an issue. But we'll just look at that quickly. So you can say when I clicked on new issue, I can give it issue title, I can give it the status, I can say the issue type, I can even assign it to a member of a group called team, which was created before. We talked briefly about groups, so this is where you say, hey, this is my development team, and this app instance which I've cloned is only for the people in my team, and only they will be able to be assigned to here. And you have a priority, which you can set. You can specify more details about the platform. You can specify the repro steps. If so, these are probably not familiar to everybody, but this is how a typical issue tracker looks like. And this whole app was built in a few minutes. So that's the kind of power that Meon puts in the hands of its users, where you can create extremely complicated apps in just a few minutes. All you've done here is you have an app which you called issues, and then you added an issue item. The issue item had all these fields. You had a counter field called issue ID, you had a string field called issue, you had a choice field called status, with open being the default choice and these being the choices. Again, you had an issue type which had these choices, and bug was the default issue type. Assigned to is something called a group ref field, which basically allows you to reference a person who belongs to a group, a user on Meon who belongs to a group on which you have created. And again, another choice field, a string field, a text field, and another text field. And of course, there's always this mandatory topics that you could tag it with. So we'll not be publishing it right now because I don't think there's much point in doing that at this point. But that's just wanted to show you the kind of complex structures that you can create with Meon, and an app for creating events, just tracking events that are happening in the news right now, like some major event that happened, and this kind of a stream of information coming in about that, then you can track that over here, and other members can post their own, pictures, videos, uh, updates about what's going on with that event. There's a status updates where you just share stuff, and you have a game design and development question answers app. You have a programming question answers app. Then you have this is an interesting one. There's really two apps here. One is called Jobs, and one you'll see later called Resumes. And this is an app which allows a small organization to post their jobs. Now, the reason for an app like this is, of course, there are all these job sites, and they provide very, very powerful tooling to create your own jobs. But one thing I've noticed is that a lot of recruiters find it a challenge to differentiate themselves. So let's say they've shortlisted a bunch of candidates and they're now sending mails out to them. Right now, the mails are pretty standard in format, and they look pretty similar. It's very hard to distinguish one from the other and differentiate yourself. But a recruiter could create a very creative structure for the way they want to describe themselves and describe the company that the position is in, and the perks and everything else about the company. Let's say they wanted a differentiated experience. It just takes a few minutes to build on Meon. So you could go in here and create something like this, or use this app itself if you like it, or you could clone it and you could make changes to it, and then have your own portal for where people get directed to when they want to see a job posting that you posted. So that's so there's a similar one called Resumes where and then this jobs app has a job posting, so you can create a job posting, and under that people can create their resumes. They can add their resumes under that. So that's that. And then there's another app which kind of flips this around, where a candidate can have a very differentiated resume, and then recruiters can come in and post job postings to those resumes. So you would just have, like, both of them are sort of inverses of each other, and I think it's just an interesting experiment and an interesting experience to see how these apps could be used to have very, very novel ways of describing both job postings and resumes. And then here's an app where I would hopefully like to fill in quite a bit of content before it goes live. But so this is an app which just tracks important dates. So you could have all the holidays and different dates with their significances. Here's an app just to share links to pictures, an app to share great deals, an app to track companies, their information, their profile, and the feeds about the company, and so on. There's an app to create like a presentation as a series of slides, an app to just share infographics, multimedia playlists. So this is another interesting thing where think of a playlist which has a video and maybe an article after that, and then something else. So you could have a sequenced collection of resources related to some common thread, and say, so it could be like a learning playlist where you're learning some topic, and they say, hey, first watch this video, then read this documentation, then go and take this test and take this quiz. So you could have different things pointed to from this multimedia playlist. So that's one of interesting app there. Code Challenges is like a quiz about coding, and Code Reviews, something where you can post some code and others could review it. Again, all these are for the developers. There's tech support, where you can ask questions about any tech that you're having troubles with, and others in the community who know about it could come in and respond to that. Group Tasks is a task management app where you have a group of people and there are tasks assigned to each other. And this is an interesting app because it has another really cool feature which also the issue tracker had, which I forgot to mention at that time. But both these apps have this ability to track changes. So you can actually have changes that happen. So whenever you change the state of a task, or in this case, or in the issue tracker, whether it's open or it moved on to some other state, you can have the comments below actually automatically post things saying this thing changed, and the user enters a comment there. So you know what each state change, who did it, and how it happened, and what was the status at that point. So this is a very cool feature which is available in choice fields, which allows you to, so when you have a field of type choice, you can add the ability to track changes just with a single click, and it'll automatically, whenever you change that field in the actual instance, then it'll pop up a dialog where you can enter some comments, and the comments will automatically get logged, and every change will get logged. So it'll say status change from open to fixed, and it'll add the comment of the person who did that and says, hey, I fixed it or whatever. So that's group tasks. There's personal tasks, which is just tasks for yourself. Notes, again, a note taking app only for yourself. You could also make it like public, whatever. So it's just up to you to clone it and make some changes. You have an app for quotations, where you can just share cool quotations, an app to share and store all your links in one place. We've had apps like that in the past, but this was more an exercise to see how easy it is to build uh, this kind of an app on Meon. And then there's current events, which is also, I think we saw something similar in the past. So, and then here's one of my favorites in a different thing, so a different dimension. There's all these things which get forwarded, which some people like and some others don't. So I thought that it would be really cool to have an app where you can clone it and say, these are all my forwards. Whoever wants to see it will come there and see it. If they're not interested, it will not come onto other people's, it won't just flood other people's walls. So that's an option there. You have an FAQ app, which allows you to create FAQs. There's an app for mentoring where people can connect up with people, where they other mentors who can advise them, more experienced people in the domains that they're looking for help. And that's another one. So all of these are pretty elaborate apps. There's a lot going on behind each of them. There's really no time, but you can explore. There's no time in this video to go into them, each of them in too much detail. But you can explore each of them and see how it's structured. And if you want it slightly differently, you can always clone it and change it, or you can always create the app from scratch and make a change there. So there's resumes, there's destinations. So let's say you are planning to go for a vacation to a specific place. You can enter the destination here and ask people for advice on good local events, local sightseeing places, local hotels to stay in, and so on and so forth. So this is an app for that. There's a shopping app where you can post a product and say, I'm looking for this in this location and with this budget, within this budget, and here are the parameters that I'm looking for. Where can I find it? Where's the easiest place for me, or the best place to go and get this? And then others in the community can respond if they know of some such options. And here's an app, again, one of my favorite feel-good apps, which basically allows you to, it's intended to be cloned, and users can post what they consider to be good news, good changes, positive changes in the world. There's a lot of sensational news in the media, which probably is not what we would all consider good, but it'll be nice to have a place where we can share really, good changes that happen in the world. Whatever your definition may be, you can create your own clone and define that these are what I consider good news. So here's another personal kind of app where I have my people, the people in my life who have had a huge influence in my life. I can just have an app, and each of us can post either directly here, or which I don't think you're allowed to do, but you can clone the app and then say, these are the people in my life. And that's a way, people in your family or friends can see who are the people who had a great influence on you. There's a survey which is very similar to the poll that we talked about, and there's a poll here. Survey is just very similar to a poll, except that the survey can have multiple questions, whereas a poll has just one. There's a feedback app we talked about, which you can clone and use for your organization, a forum as well. The request an app is, of course, meant mainly for Meon, where you can request an app that you want on Meon. Then there's all these are Meon specific apps. And then there's the workouts app, which lets you track workouts, and you can track exercise. You can have a database of or a collection of exercises, and you can then actually track a workout when you go out and say, hey, I did so many sets of this exercise with so much weight and so many reps, or how much distance I ran if it was sort of a running kind of activity. So this is a pretty interesting app as well to look at. It has a feature called item references, which allows you to reference an exercise from within a workout. So you can have a link to an exercise within each workout that you have and say it's the same exercise, like a bench press or whatever, and that's tracked over there. So this is also a very cool app in my opinion. There are apps out there which do that, but I think the power of Meon is the ability to have your own differentiated experience. So if there's something which just doesn't feel quite right in an app that you already use for doing things like this, then you always have the option to use Meon for making it. Or if there's a completely new experience you'd like, Meon is the place to come and create it, because you can do it in just a few minutes. So that was a pretty elaborate tour of all the apps that exist as of now. And I guess by the time this video is over, there'll be more apps because we keep creating new apps and new ideas that keep coming in. So by the time this video actually goes out live, I hope to have a lot more apps. And I think apps will keep adding up over time. But this is just a tour of the existing apps at this point. And you might find it interesting to know that some of these apps are still could be more fleshed out than they are. But the most interesting fact is that all of these apps put together took about a couple of days to build. So all of the about 85 or 90 apps here, which the admin created, and I mean I created as the admin of the site. And basically, it took 2 days, and most apps did not take more than 5 minutes or so to actually create, and most of the time was spent in figuring out what the app should look like and what it should do and what its settings should be, so that it's clonable or not, and those kind of decisions. But actual creation of the apps took a few minutes. So that's the power of Meon. Go explore the apps, create new apps. This video probably gave you a sense of the kind of apps that can be created, but I'm sure that the best apps have yet to come from the ideas in your head of what you would like to do in your web presence, either at work or at home. And so just let us know. You can always go up to this actions menu and say request a new app, and you can tell us what kind of app you'd like, which you don't see here, and we will try and create it and give it to you very quickly, because the actual creation time, as I said, is just a few minutes. So if you've described it well in detail, then it should not take more than a few minutes to have that app up and running. And so you can request it, or you can look at further videos which teach you how to which tell you how to create your own apps. And you can also clone some of these apps and make variations of those as you need, which also will be discussed a little more in detail in a future video. I think we've already covered a bit about it in the cloning apps video, but I think there's a lot more that you can do if you understand the inner details of Meon. So thank you for watching, and hope you have fun playing around with these apps. Thank you. Bye.